So essentially what I'm asking you to do is sort of extend what you were doing in the first paper, but instead of having lots of different things to draw from, to discuss, I want you to focus on symbolism alone. So I'm asking you to choose one short story that we've read and focus on the symbolism within that story. So what story you choose is entirely up to you, and what symbols you choose are also up to you. What you want to discuss is up to you. You can certainly talk about multiple symbols within a story, but I always want you to be looking for not just to tell me what symbols are present, or what symbols you see in the story. That's not an argument, really. What I want you to do is construct an argument about what those symbols are and what they mean. So in the same way that you were doing with paper 1, where you were suggesting, okay, here are these elements of language and this is what it's doing for the story. It's the same thing. It's close reading. It's just focused on symbolism. So you're going to be constructing an argument that basically suggests here's the symbol and here's what it does to help us understand the meaning or the theme of this story. Okay? So that's basically what your goal is going to be for every symbol that you talk about. Sometimes a symbol might help us to understand a character a little better, and by understanding that character a little better, we can get at the theme a little bit better. So sometimes it's a two-step process of argumentation. So you're going to find the symbol, and maybe that symbol is the symbol of the character, and you're going to discuss how that symbol of the character works, but then you're going to also discuss how understanding that character a little bit better helps us to understand the theme that the author is trying to present. So I give you some examples here. One example. So if in a hypothetical story, and this isn't from an actual story that we're reading, we were reading a story about a woman's desire for a happy family. Okay, that's the basic message of the story. That's what the story seems to be focused on. And there was a long passage or an extended discussion of a vegetable garden that she tended and nurtured and all these kinds of things. And it talks about her efforts in the garden and planting and tending and weeding and all these kinds of things. You could certainly say, or you could argue, that the vegetable garden becomes a symbol of her nature as a mother figure, or her nurturing nature. So the vegetable garden itself is certainly not her nurturing nature. Like, a symbol is not the thing itself. I hope that makes sense. A symbol represents something else, okay? So a lot of people get a little bit derailed here when we're talking about symbolism because they think, oh, well, this event happened and that symbolizes this. An event isn't a symbol, okay? A part of an event could symbolize something else, like an element of something that happens. Maybe an action itself might symbolize something else. But a plot event, something that moves the plot along, something that occurs in the story, is usually not a symbol. Okay, let me say that again. A plot event is usually not a symbol. A symbol is something that kind of like takes on a resonance or an importance that it really shouldn't have. So it might be a structure or a house, or it might be a thing, a tangible object that just seems to be really important to a lot of people, or even just to one person, or it just seems to, like, the author's trying to draw your attention to it all the time. That is a symbol. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to look at the places where the author is talking about that thing and look at if that discussion changes. So I say you want to find the symbol or image that you want to discuss. And symbolism and imagery go hand in hand. So a lot of times symbolism can be found in those really rich descriptive passages that paint you a picture, okay? So that's a good place to start, is look for those really descriptive passages. And is there some kind of object that just seems like it jumps out at you? Usually that's an indication that it's a symbol. And then you want to look at the different ways that it's presented and how it connects with the overall message of the story. So again, you're going to have to figure out, what's the overall message of the story? What are we supposed to take away from it? What are we supposed to learn? What is the theme? Those are important elements. When you're trying to find symbols, you want to look for, like I mentioned, you want to look for objects primarily. People usually aren't symbols unless, and there's an unless they're not really well developed characters. So in that case, they're usually going to be minor characters, and they just seem to be kind of placeholders. So you're sort of reading along, and all of a sudden there's this random character that's kind of just thrown in there. And they don't really, the author doesn't take any time to really develop that character. They just kind of stand in as kind of like stick figures almost. They're very flat. That's the literary term that we use for them. They're flat characters. So a flat character literally doesn't have any roundness to them, meaning that character doesn't have any dimension. We don't get to know that character. We don't get to have any kind of sense of what motivates them, or we don't get a snapshot into their mind. Nothing like we get with a main character, for example, where sometimes we might be able to hear from an omniscient narrator what that person is thinking. We might be able to get a good sense of motivation. We may see them in lots of different ways. And even if they're slightly mysterious, we still see them in complexity. Flat characters don't do that. So a flat character might be a symbol of something else. But that's really the only time a character is going to be symbolism, is going to work as symbolism. Okay? So really, 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 I want you to not get derailed in finding symbols in plot events or people, with the exception of flat characters. And I can tell you that in Flannery O'Connor's A Good Man is Hard to Find, there are several flat characters. And so they really might be representative of something else. But I think it's infinitely easier to find symbolism in objects or places or things that seem to be just take on a life of its own, as I mentioned. So paper 2 is going to be 4 to 5 pages long and demonstrate strong argumentative structure. So if you are talking about multiple symbols, which is fine, as I mentioned, then you're going to have to draw those together in some way. And the way that you're going to do that is by discussing how they're all contributing to developing this theme or message of the overall short story. It's important that you understand the story as a whole, that you know really what's going on in the story, because you don't want to say something is a symbol for something in an overall meaning of a story if that's not actually what the author is trying to portray. I'm not suggesting that there's not some wiggle room there for interpretation, but you don't want to not understand what is actually happening in the story. So if you have any questions about a particular story, like what actually happens in the story because I kind of got lost, let me know, because I can certainly try to help you figure out where, like, Dr. Lampkin, I think this is what happened. I'm not entirely sure. Am I on the right track? I will definitely tell you if you're on the wrong track. And I'll do that with your proposal as well. So when you send me your email proposal for your paper, what I would really like for you to do is tell me what you think, where you think you're going. And I got a lot of proposals that were really good last time, but I also got a lot of proposals that were super vague. And I can't help you if I don't know what you're writing about. So telling me, yeah, I want to write about Young Goodman Brown, the symbols in Young Goodman Brown, that does not help me help you. What helps me help you is if you have really thought about it and you say, well, I want to talk about the staff, and I want to talk about the pink ribbon, and I want to talk about the forest in Young Goodman Brown, and I think that this is where I want to go with that. You certainly don't have to be married to the idea, but you need to be thinking about it and give me some sense of where you're going with it so that I can lead you in good directions. Or I can say, oh, that's so awesome. Yeah, that's going to be a really rich discussion. I think you're going to do really well. Or have you thought about this? Or I'm not really sure that's a symbol, but think about this in this context. That's part of the purpose of those proposals, is that I can kind of give you some feedback and tell you if you're on the right track so that you can feel confident going forward, but you can also get off the wrong track if you're on the wrong track. So please be as specific as possible in your proposal. It's important that you are thinking about it and have thought about it at least a little bit when you're proposing what you're going to do. The other thing is that if you're feeling like symbols are very foreign to your experience, which I understand, let me just tell you that symbols are everywhere. I mean, something like the American flag is a symbol. Something like when you think of a dove, what is that a symbol of? Most of you are like peace, right? Symbolism is everywhere and it's very universal. The idea that an object can stand for something else is not something foreign to us. So if this feels like really, just really outside of your realm of experience, I think you're not seeing the connection between real life and literature, which is, understandable. But like, symbols are everywhere and we use them all the time. We wear jewelry that symbolizes things. I have a wedding ring that symbolizes my relationship with my husband and the commitment that we've made. And the ring is, it never ends. And so neither does our union, and all these kinds of things that we just sort of take for granted every day. Those are the same kind of things that are going to pop up in this literature. Okay. So if you see a barren desert, what does that symbolize? Okay. Or if you see green fields, what does that symbolize? If you have someone who has a suitcase that is worn down, what does that symbolize about that person or about this place? Okay, if you have a place that is, if you have a house that is grand but falling down, falling apart and looks very old, what does that symbolize? Okay, so all of these things are things that are going to pop up in the literature, and all of these things are symbols, okay? So you really can choose probably any one of the stories that we've read and find symbolism within them and have a really rich paper as a result. I want to caution you about one thing. This is the paper where people get in trouble with looking at other sources, okay? I understand that if you don't have any idea where you want to go, that you might start Googling symbols and this story. The problem is that when you do that before you've written your paper, you kind of contaminate the well of your mind. Not to be dramatic, but you kind of contaminate the well of your mind, and what ends up happening is those ideas sort of permeate, and you don't know anymore what was your idea and what was someone else's idea. And your whole paper ends up being someone else's idea. And that's not acceptable, okay? So I strongly, strongly caution you not to Google. Just sit on your hands, okay? And just think. Read the story. Read it again. Underline things that you think might be symbols. Brainstorm. What might they be symbols of? What's the theme of the story? What's the overall message that you think someone's trying to convey? And then use your own creative, wonderful thought process to think about this symbolism. There's so much there, and there's so much in you, and you have so much to say, even if you don't believe that you do, that I really want you to write this paper. I don't want this paper to be written by Google or Novel Help or Buzzle or whatever those things are that give you, the quick and dirty four symbols in this short story. It's not what I'm looking for. And I know it when it happens. You might not think that I know it, but I really do. So please, please, please use your own minds. Have confidence in your own ideas. And if you don't have confidence in them, ask me. Am I on the right track? Do these seem like symbols? Can I say this? Can I make this argument? That's what I'm here for. I'll be happy to help you. I would much prefer you ask me than defer to Google and us end up in a whole other different kind of conversation later on, okay? So, layers of meaning. That's what symbolism is about. Layers and layers of meaning, figuring out how this author is trying to portray this theme in lots of different ways, and symbolism being one of them. Have fun with it. I think symbols are really cool, and they're really fun to think about how all of these things all around us represent something else, and how a whole room in a story, the description can be loaded with all of these amazing things that you never would have thought about. You think, oh, it's just a description of a room. But the more you come to it and the more you understand about the story and what the underlying meaning is, the more you can come to it and say, wow, maybe the room itself is symbolic. What's in the room? How can that be symbolic? And it just opens up a whole other world of meaning. So it's meant to be a little bit fun. It's meant to be kind of like a puzzle that you figure out, and then it's meant to be an opportunity for you to show me your good writing skills, okay? So hopefully that helps. Let me know if you have questions. Otherwise, good luck, and I'll look forward to seeing these.